an interesting couple of weekends on a Sunday. Obvious. And they were off coach. And they were sandwich.
Whichever is, it looks malevolent. It's looking malevolent.
Straight at you. What you say?
Can they be separate? Good evening, councillors, and welcome to this extraordinary meeting of the council on the 13th of January 2025. Item number 1 on the agenda is Chair's opening remarks, and I've only got my thanks for you coming to attend this extraordinary evening on a very cold, wintry evening. So thank you very much for being in attendance here this evening. So item number 2, apologies for absence received, please, Town Clerk.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So Councillor Pennington sends his apologies a travel commitment. Councillor Gray has a personal commitment, and Councillor Danielle Carter has a personal commitment.
Thank you very much, Town Clerk. Item number 3, declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members in respect of business to be transacted on this agenda this evening. Does anybody have any interest to declare? That's a new return. Thank you very much. Item number 4 is public participation, and this is a 20-minute session is set aside for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect of the business on the agenda and other matters if time permits. Individual representation should not exceed 5 minutes. Written notice of the desire to exercise the right to speak, together with the topic to be addressed, must be given to the Town Clerk prior to noon on the day of the meeting. Do we have any public participation?
No request, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Town Clerk. Item number 5 is the draft budget for 2025-26. And this is to receive and approve the draft Sandwich Town Council 2025-26 budget as recommended by the Finance and General Purposes Committee. A report from the responsible financial officer detailing significant changes from the 2024-25 budget is included. Please be aware that the precept, I've got your request, Councillor Black, please rest your arm. So, aware of the precept demand form must be submitted to Dover District Council by the 24th of January 2025. And so the budget must be approved in advance of this deadline. Amendments within the budget can be made throughout the year when approved by resolution, but there will be no further opportunity to change or increase the precept during the year after the precept demand form has been submitted. The budget indicates a 5% rise to council tax, which equates to £149.90 per Band D property, a rise of £7.14 per household. Please note that the tax base for Sandwich in 2025-26 has not been confirmed, and therefore the final precept figure can change, and a decision is required on this. This is attachment number 1. I hope you've all been able to read attachment number 1 and the Excel spreadsheet that's appertaining to that. And the recommendation for this is that the attached draft budget for 2025-26 is approved. I will now open the floor for discussion. Councillor Black, please stand and
talking
address the
of
council.
drafts, we're not using our energy very efficiently by having this door open. Fair enough if we're waiting for public participation, but may I suggest in terms of energy efficiency and avoiding draft?
Indeed.
Close the door.
Please do, Councillor. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Black. So did anybody have any matters to raise from this? As I say, it has been discussed to some length at the Finance and General Purposes Committee, and this was the recommendations that they agreed as well. Councillor Tuker, please stand and address the council.
Yeah, I just don't want it to feel like a tumbleweed meeting. So we have had 2 reviews of the proposals with a number of changes from the first to the second draft to the final draft. So it's important to recognise that we've had quite an amount of discussion around this, and proposals reflect those discussions.
Thank you very much for that synopsis. That's very kind of you. So, were there any other? Councillor Breen, please stand and address the council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. May I thank the responsible finance officer and the town clerk for the work, and indeed the Finance and General Purposes Committee for the work that they've put in. And can I just draw your attention, Mr. Mayor, within the report, it says moving forward, we've got an operating funds provision of 60,000, and you will see on line 1550 that we have another provision for unexpected items of £20,773. So this is really healthy that we've got this kind of provision within the budget moving forward, because you never know what requests will be coming through to the council.
No, thank you very much for raising that. And I do believe that the school where I'm a governor, we hold 3 months minimum operating outgoings expenditure for the school as a backup for the school as well. So, and I think that should be similar here, that we should have that provision.
Yeah, well, indeed we have, Mr. Mayor, because this equates to 20% of the budget.
Indeed. Thank you very much for announcing that. Councillor Murray, please stand and address the council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It looks okay. I won't vote for it 'cause it's a 5% increase. for the people out there that are suffering at the moment regarding, especially with the winter fuel payments being taken away by the central government and stuff. So I'm voting for it. However, I would like to address regarding myself and Councillor Franklin be speaking openly about this, is about employment of a town sergeant. We've, in discussion we've had in the past, as we saw at Speakers' Day and other events that you've been to, Mr. Beswick events, this council, Sandstown Council, is the only one that hasn't got a town sergeant, and it's quite embarrassing for the council, considering that we are now the Speakers' Council this year, because you're the Speaker of St Cinqueports. I do feel that needs to be put within the budget to seek employment of a town sergeant.
Indeed. Councillor Chuka, did you want to?
So I recognise the requirements. Also, we have savings that could be made from expenses that we incur by not having a town sergeant. So it's not straightforward starting from zero. However, what I would say is I would personally prefer that we have a written report on this so we can actually evaluate it properly in terms of a solution. So we've obviously got some contingency in any case. What we haven't got, I think, is a clear explanation of what the cost is, but also what the savings will be through other expenses we have. So I prefer to suggest a motion that we require a written report to the next meeting of the council that explains the proposal that we want to adopt or not.
Indeed,
So if that's acceptable, and whoever would like to take ownership of that report would be really helpful.
Thank you. Councillor
We have to
Franklin.
vote on the motion though.
I just thought, I mean, we've gone by nearly 2 years now without a town sergeant, and some of the ceremonials that we've had have not been quite right, and the mayor's deputy, the mayor's just put in the wrong way round, wasn't it, in the holder downstairs. And those little things, but it's procedures, isn't it?
That's right.
And as a sink port and a head port, and it's also this year, because I don't believe haven't got a driver either, and it's so important, especially with going to Brightlingsea. There'd be at least 3 visits to Brightlingsea, which are very long, 12-hour days. There'd be 2 visits to Hastings, plus visiting all the other and all the other function. So I think we should be looking a bit like the Hythe model, where they have a part-time town site that just deals with the ceremonial functions and acts as a driver for the mayor.
Indeed, thank you very much for that, both councillors Franklin and Councillor Marie. That is, thank you for that.
Just to add, sorry, Mr. Richard, as to Councillor Chuka's point, I'm more than happy to work with Councillor Franklin to put a report together for the council to look at, to view, and to see the benefits of having a town sergeant for Sandstown.
Thank you very much. That's very good. I also wanted to point out to this council that to do with we're currently undertaking some research and a report which the town clerk and I are hoping to bring to this council about future employment of staff within the council, and this has come about due to the recent changes in caretaking staff. And so we, from my initiation, we have not rushed into the recruitment of a new caretaker, and we wanted to review and research what was the best industry standard to go forward with having the staff provision, but not necessary in employing people direct. So, and this perhaps the result of the caretaker report could be taken forward to the town sergeant. So in other words, we're looking for an alternative employment method, not 0 hours or anything nondescript like that, that can be used by this council to engage better employment practices, but also to make cost savings where they're possible. So, thank you. So I think it was Councillor Breen and then Councillor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to bring to your attention again a contingency, which is in the staffing contingency. You'll find it on line 1100/1, and there is a provision of £5,000 for next year. So people might want to bear that in mind.
Thank you very much. That's very well spotted and reminded. I'm very grateful to you for that. So, Councillor Wiles, next.
So, as Councillor Shuker said, we have looked at this in some depth in Finance and General Purposes Committee. We started out higher than 5%. A 5% increase, I think, is a prudent approach. RPI and CPI are around 3.5%, so it's slightly above inflation. But given the amount of work that we're doing in the town, I think a £7 increase for an average Band D household is a fairly modest rise. So I would recommend that. With regard to the town sergeant, I think the proper place for that discussion is in the HR committee, because they are responsible for the strategic looking at all of the employment needs of the town and
Exactly.
generally.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor
So
Tudor.
I'd like to go back to my earlier point. Under Standing Order 6.1.1, a motion can be requested, not requiring notice, to request a written report. And I would request that from Councillor Franklin and Councillor Marie. And on the basis of what you said, is that will be taken to the HR committee to discuss. That would be the appropriate place. So we would need to vote on that if we want that taken forward.
Oh, of course. Yes, thank you. Councillor Morehouse. Councillor
I'd like to
Morehouse.
second that proposal.
Oh, sorry, I see. Okay. I think we need to have a formal recommendation for that. So were you putting that forward, Councillor Tudor, for the report?
Yes, so I am requesting a motion under Standing Order 6.1.1, and it is subset P, which is requesting a written report, and that's to present a business case for employing in some shape or form a town sergeant as opposed to using agency type employment. That should include the costs that are going to be saved by doing that alongside the costs of employing somebody to do that. So it's a proper business case that can be evaluated through the HR committee and then onto STC. That's the proposal.
Indeed. And I believe Councillor Morehouse has seconded that. Are you speaking on the motion,
I
Councillor
am.
Black?
Yes.
Please stand.
I thought 2 minutes ago we were talking about how you would actually consider something in terms of caretaking and so on. Are you suggesting these roles could be rolled into one, in which case Councillor Tudor's amendment needs a little bit of amending to include that, and it comes to the HR committee. But it would need to be the town sergeant, employment town sergeant, and any related advantages that might come from some kind of change to the caretaking arrangements. That's what I think we need to have. So a slight amendment to the amendment.
I see. I think they are separate roles, and if you attend any of the other councils of the Cinque Port State, those roles are kept separate. So unless Councillor Tudor wanted to amend his...
I don't want to modify the motion because I think the motion stands in the HR committee, which Councillor Black is also a member. There will be a discussion about opportunities and options in terms of taking that, and that should hopefully be in parallel to the more strategic report that's been written as well. So you can look at it in the round. But nice
the discussion a few minutes ago was that that report would show the strategic one to come here. It should come to the HR committee.
It
it will be.
It will be. Well, that's been clarified then. So we go to the HR committee. But the town sergeant one, which is one, and secondly, this desire to look at different ways of having caretaking, cleaning, whatever.
Exactly.
So we've got two separate reports.
Indeed, we have. That's correct. Thank you very much.
Clarified.
So the motion that has been raised by Councillor Tudor has been seconded by Councillor Morehouse, and this is for a report to be drafted on behalf of the business case for a town sergeant. Please show your cards if you're in favour of that. That's unanimous. Thank you, Town Clerk. Returning back to the draft budget, was there any further discussion or any matters to raise on this? This is very important. So if you do have any concerns or issues, do raise them now or forever hold your peace. Councillor Black.
Yes. I did ask the question, I don't know whether it needs to be considered further. At the moment, the loan we have is a fixed term and fixed conditions loan. But if we are generating more revenue from the market, I would suggest that at some future date, this council should debate whether it would wish to repay that loan faster. So that will be something that will be coming up, but I'm just putting it out for as a thought. Now, I did correspond with the RFO and the town clerk about this, and I appreciate at the moment we're set in stone, but we could always get a pneumatic drill to that stone.
Indeed, thank you very much for raising that. That is something that would be worth discussing in more detail later on. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Morehouse?
Just an observation, we've talked about a percentage increase of 5%. What that actually equates to is 14 pence per week for a Band B household.
Oh, thank you very much for that.
Which is quite respectable. And where I live, the majority of the Sandwich South is Band C, so that'd be around about 10 pence per week.
Exactly. Thank you very much for that calculation. That's very good. So, if there's no further discussion, have you got, no, if there's no further discussion, I would like to propose from the chair that we accept and approve this draft budget for 2025-26. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Wiles, are you seconding?
I would second and also ask to add to that we give grateful thanks to the RFO and the town clerk for all the work they've done on this.
Indeed, thank you very much. Of course, a very good addition there. So this has been proposed and seconded. All those in favour of the draft budget as seen? Thank you very much, councillors. That is approved. Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, now there is one eyesight, I can hardly see, have they changed the light bulbs? It seems very dim in it.
Yeah, you're in the dark then.
You're exactly in the dark there, Mr. Mayor.
Right, it was very dark.
Town clerk, do apologise, my vote was an abstention, by the way.
Oh, beg your pardon. I should have asked, actually. Thank you for that. Well, that's worse, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's improvement.
I thought it was,
Oh, there's only one switch there.
yeah, no, the lights, no voltage will change.
It's cost saving effectiveness.
Candles next, Mr. Mayor.
Bring your own head torches, please. So, item number 6, parking survey consultation. Dover District Council are seeking views for a parking survey consultation from the council, and this is attachment number 2. You may have seen several of us actually raise this when this came out. You were asked if you wanted to reply to it personally as an individual member or resident of the town. The town clerk is now asking us if we want to reply to the parking survey as an organised body known as Sandwich Town Council. Does anybody have any discussion? Councillor Morehouse, please, Stan.
Yeah, one comment, and it's a long-held belief of mine. Across the district, we have the car parks in Dover, Deal and Sandwich, all on the same tariff, apart from Gaze and Salt, up until 2023, when I believe it was brought into parity with the Quay and Cattle Market. My problem with this is that we are at a significant disadvantage given the fact that we have significantly less in the way of retail floor space than either Dover or Deal. Now, I do appreciate that if Sandwich was to get a more preferential rate in terms of parking tariff, then there would be a significant shortfall in the budget for DDC. But from an STC perspective, and this was something that when we had a Chamber of Commerce used to be raised very frequently about the disparity between Dover, Deal, Sandwich in terms of parking tariff and retail floor space. Could we accommodate some kind of response to that effect within our comments?
Indeed we could, and I'll go further to say that whilst I was a DDC councillor, every time they went to raise the tariff, I won't say every year, but every time they did raise the tariff, I raised that argument that you've just said, Councillor Morehouse, that Sandwich is at a disadvantage and the retail floor space for both Dover and Deal is much advanced to what Sandwich is, and that it should be based on some sort of taper process, where Sandwich is at the lower end of the taper. But on every time I delivered my argument, I was rebuffed and told that cannot be undertaken, which I found pretty poor. But indeed, I believe that is a good option to discussion to put into the survey. So I think Councillor Mallet had his hand up first, and then Councillor Anderson. Please stand.
Mr. Mayor, with regard to the other side of the parking survey, the information that I would like, and I think STC should have, is the income per day. Because where this helps us is with the events that we have in Sandwich, where Dover District Council might say, you've got to recompense us for the parking taken up. It might be the case that we actually bring in more because all the other car parks are full. Now, I actually did an FOI request to DDC on this, and all they were able to say is this car park has this income per year.
Indeed.
Now, as the whole idea of a car parking fee is based on time and date, the data has to be there,
Of course,
and it has to be accessible. For them to say they can't do that, I think I don't really believe that. But as there's going to be a survey, include that as an output for us so that we have more information about how that parking is used day by day. Wednesday will be interesting because it's early closing. Saturdays will be interesting.
Market day.
Then we can do a little bit more. We can be informed.
Indeed, thank you very much. And as the receipts are electronically based, the data is there, isn't it? So it just needs to be mined by somebody. So we could add that to the list if possible, Town Clerk.
Yeah, all I'd say is obviously there is a time limit on the survey response, which isn't very much now. It's 19th.
Yeah.
So you won't get that information for you to be able to,
Oh, no, I don't want the information, but it's
From
to
the
include it in the
requesting.
survey.
Okay,
Requesting
Yeah.
that.
I'm happy to write a sentence or a paragraph.
thank you, Councillor. Thank you, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Anderson and then Councillor Chuka.
I just have a question because I don't really understand this argument about the amount of retail space and the parking fee. Because if, for example, you're aiming for an aggregate income, the larger the amount of retail space, the lower the parking fee. So could you I'm being a bear of very little brain. I don't understand the argument. Could you just explain
Oh,
in
sure.
words of one syllable?
Councillor Morehouse.
So if you look at the amount of shopping space for shops in Dover and Deal,
Yes, it's
Far
much
out.
bigger.
far exceeds what we have in Sandwich.
Yes.
And yet we pay the same rate as both the other towns.
So what's the problem with that? Can
The
you
problem
explain?
is that because we've got less retail floor space, and people in general would therefore, you would think, spend less time here.
Oh, it's a question of
Then-
time. Okay, okay. It's just that there would be fewer people coming in order. Anyway, okay, so it's a question of time.
That's it, yeah. Basically, obviously, if we had, because we've got fewer shops and independent shops, if we had a lower parking tariff, that's it, we would be able to do that. That's okay, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Chuka?
Yeah, I did give some comments into the town clerk, so I just wanted to make sure that I express them here so people
It'd be a pleasure to hear them.
accept them or throw them out. So I looked at it from a different perspective, because if we stop any payment of parking charges, that will impact EDC, and it's I took it from a different perspective. What things could we ask for that might help encourage, at least subtly, in terms of people travelling in to use the shop? So one of the things I did ask was that maybe in the Cattle Market car park to look at whether there's an option for people who drive and park in there to pay on exit rather than coming in. that would have probably an infrastructure cost around barriers, but the issue is that when people come in, they usually think, what's the shortest time I need in the town to do what I want to do? Whereas if they're paying when they leave, they might actually think, I'll go off and have a coffee or whatever it is. So that was one aspect, just at least to surface it. Secondly, Market Street, we've got two essential services there, the post office and the chemist.
And the library.
And the library, sorry, I missed that. I'll have to rewrite this. Thank you for that. Again, I think there we should be looking for some short-term, quick, free parking there. So people, if they're going into the chemist, they've got half-hour stay or a 15-minute stay to allow them to do that. So that's another thing. And the last thing was, in King Street, we have 4 to 5 spaces there that have limited parking, and that maybe we should look at the time limits in the bays, for 4 to 5 bays in there for 30 minutes to 1 hour for free. Now, I've taken these are sounded, I've discussed with others outside the council, and these are sensible suggestions that have been around for a while, and I think we've got an opportunity here to put these forward.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you on that.
And I'd just like to say to Town Clerk, sorry, I left King Street off there, so that's the street that refers to.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And just to reply to your paying on exit, I was the lead advisor on assisting with putting ANPR parking into Canterbury, into car parks in Canterbury. And there was a consultancy with Dover District Council to see if they wanted to follow suit. And unfortunately, they haven't taken that up. And it is much more beneficial for parking receipts of parking on exit. So, and as I say, Dover District Council had the ability to follow on from Canterbury City Council to do that, and they haven't taken that up. So that is a very short-sighted option there. So, Councillor Morehouse and then Councillor Wiles.
Another issue I feel, because we have quite a bit of communication recently about disabled parking adjacent to the doctor's surgery. I feel that if we were to provide 2 spaces from our allocation to the car park and ask DDC to match that, and then we've got 4 disabled parking spaces adjacent to the GP surgery. And referring to Councillor Mallet, I'll be very happy to ask DDC for a what-if analysis on the data that you're requesting. And I'll do that for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You okay getting all these? Thank you. And then I believe Councillor Wiles had a...
Yeah, it's just on the Canterbury scheme, it works very well. You can set up your own account. You don't have to touch a machine or use a card. You just vehicle recognition. And I feel that would not only bring more revenue, but it avoids the frustration of people dealing with broken down machines and technology that doesn't work.
It does. It's
Dover can follow their example. They should follow it.
Yeah, they had the option to. They just haven't taken it forward, unfortunately. So, Councillor Mallet, did you have a question? No, you didn't. Okay, then. Oh, super. So, can I ask then? We've had quite a lot of very good suggestions and discussion on this, but could I ask that if anybody else has anything else to go into the survey, and don't forget one. Towards the very end of it, I'm trying to remember back when I did my one, there is a large box for narrative. So the very first few questions, which are just, I believe, sort of multiple choice or yes or no answers, there is a very large box. So, and obviously the more that we can send through on this parking survey, hopefully the more it will steer Dover District Council to putting in a fairer and a more egalitarian system for residents and visitors to park in our town. So thank you very much for that. So I don't believe there's any recommendation.
No, it was just really to collate comments. But what I would say is if anybody has any additional comments after the meeting this evening, can I please have those by 5 p.m. on Thursday this week, because I will be submitting on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gemma. That's good. Item number 7 is VE Day 80th event, and Councillor Mallet seeks a debate on the proposal for a VE Day 80th anniversary event and requests approval of a provisional budget. Decision is required on this, and this was attachment number 3. I would first of all just like to say a big thank you to Councillor Mallet for leading and steering on this, and I thank you very much for sort of like assisting with the council to be able to undertake this very important celebration that will be nationally recognised around the country. And I think it's just right and correct that Sandwich Town Council puts on something suitable for these for this special occasion there. So, as I say, attachment number 3 has a large number of matters that Councillor Mallet has raised there. I don't know, Councillor Mallet, did you want to add anything or give a synopsis at all?
Just a little run through.
That would be most
Thank you.
pleasurable. Thank you.
Basically, what I'm looking at is the period on the 8th of May. Obviously, we had Sandwich Salutes the previous weekend, and it's trying to differentiate the two events, though letting them benefit each other, so that, for example, with the Sandwich Salutes, there will be a leaflet which will ideally have information about what's going to be happening on the 8th, and obviously we will need to know what is available. It's also looking at Sandwich itself. Now, there was a very big change this year in that the Fleur most likely won't be having a Dell Street party. And what that does normally is it draws people into Sandwich, the town, rather than remaining on the quay. And I'm very conscious that we need to have something so that potentially we have something like 5,000 people come through, but a significant proportion, and certainly we've recognised that at least 3,000 and more come into Sandwich based on numbers taken in St Peter's, and it's to basically keep those 3,000 and more coming into Sandwich, and possibly using the shops and museum, but essentially coming into the town and not seeing it as a separate event. Then moving on to the 8th, the particular Sandwich Town Council events, there's a number of particular things. One is having 1940s style entertainment. Whether we have a memento for a cohort of kids, something that they can take away and say, 80th anniversary, it might go in the bin. It might be given to dad, might be given to somebody else, but at least we've done something where they can take it away and say, this is a real thing. We don't have to spend much money. I mean, I look at pins, for example, the little push button pin things. You can get something, and it would need designing, of course. We have many, many designs being passed through to us from the governmental VE Day. £1.50, and if we were to do a particular cohort of, let's say, 200 to 300 children, I think that would be a very nice benefit for them and a gift from us. The other, I think, one that I've listed everything, but the other area is we would expect to have, there's two things. Leave to Land, and I would like it sort of pretty well agreed that we can have the courtroom or the hub, but somewhere in the Guildhall where the Leave to Land exhibition can be set up from roughly at least the Friday the 2nd, which is the Friday the 2nd, through to the Monday following the VE Day celebrations, and the funding available surrounding that. And the other one was on the 8th, we will be expecting to have the brazier, the beacon being lit. Now, I would like to suggest a searchlight in the forecourt, if I can get the particular searchlight, the 1940s searchlight, because I mean, it'll be a bit, I don't think anybody else in the country will have a searchlight. So it'll be quite something, and if we can do that, a 3-mile beam of light going up into the air rather than our gas burner. So if we can actually consider that as a possibility. And finally, it's any volunteers? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Mallet. That's a very good synopsis there. Councillor Morehouse?
Just to back up Councillor Mallett's proposal on the mementos, I'm amazed at how popular the Wheels of Time badges are in the museums.
Indeed.
That does fortify. All the narrative is that kids spend their time playing on computer games, but it's not that simple. The other thing is the beacon. I was invited to Wandsworth for the Jubilee in 2022, and it was significantly better because it was a real wood beacon as opposed to this rather gas. Yes.
Indeed, yeah, that's something we could consider possibly. We'd have to see with the apparatus that's there. So I've got Councillor Tucat, Councillor Marie, and Councillor Franklin.
Yeah, I was just going to point out with the account, which is now just simply an antiques market, just to make it simply understood by everybody. It's every second Sunday, so it does tie into the overall timescales, but it wouldn't be on the Salutes weekend. But we can talk about that separately.
Yes.
Because the actual stall holders are a community in their own right, so they do move around different markets. So that's why we've tied it down to that particular Sunday of each month now.
Super. Councillor Marie, Franklin, and Ripley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Matt needs to be congratulated for this. This is really good work. I remember the VE Day 75 that we had a lot of stuff planned with regards to Salutes 40, but sadly COVID took over and everything was cancelled. This is brilliant. I do hope the council get approved of the grant that he's asking for. And also the other thing that I like to congratulate Mate is he keeps everything local. It's within the town. He keeps everything local. It's not national stall holders. It's all local stuff and local traders in as well. I'm more than happy to support that, and I'm more than happy to give him my time to help organise this as well.
That's very good of you. Thank you very much. Councillor Franklin.
Oh, okay, thank you. Well, the beacon originally was sited down the bay, and it's to do with the Armada, because it all went around the coast, and they actually did put timber in. And the GPO actually, their lorry actually pulled the pole out and put it on the quay. The reason we bought the gas burner was health and safety, because I don't know the height of it. They reckon if you burn timbers up there, you're going to get sparks and things all blowing off. So you could have it, but you'd have to have a 50-foot massive radius around it. With the gas, we can get closer to it. I know some people prefer a wooden thing, but you'd have to look at the site, the area of the size, and how you have to fence it all off if you have old pallets burning up.
Thank you for that. We can take that into consideration. I have Councillor Ripley and then Councillor Fortescue.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, this is just a question about the searchlight. If we have a searchlight, do you have to be, there has to be some health and safety in terms of if it's going up 3 miles in the air, bearing in mind the air traffic that there will be around at the time.
As long as they're not German.
We didn't do it last time. Nobody complained.
That's probably not the right answer.
I'll be checking the civil aviation.
Yes, I think it's possibly need to check it out.
Yeah, I think we can. Yes, we would if it was.
Very separate.
If it was available. Yes.
Yet another health and safety issue to consider there. Let's hope these don't put us off having a bit of fun for the day indeed. Councillor Fortescue, please.
Have Sandwich schools been contacted about these proposed celebrations?
Not from myself, not yet.
But I should imagine they would be.
Yeah.
I should imagine
We've got to get. This is the first discussion.
Because I think it might be a good idea to try and think of an event that would involve Sandwich school pupils.
Yes.
That's correct. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. So we've had a very good discussion on this. Councillor Mallet has given us a mini presentation as well. The recommendations are to agree with the aims of the above, such that the arrangements can begin, and that Councillor Mallet and his initiative in progressing this. So I'd like to propose that we do accept these recommendations here, and we do appoint the budget for this. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Marie. And all those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's unanimous there. Thank you very much. Item number 8 is the date of the next full council meeting, which will be the 27th of January 2025 at 7 p.m. Thank you very much for your discussion and attendance. Oh, yes, sorry. So that is that meeting closed. Thank you very much.
Could we have the lighting checks? You do seem very dim up there. Very lowly illuminated.
Say, how rude.
I don't know, the town clerks are going to write there, not the lights from the town clerk writing.
It's absolutely fine for me, but I can get
I'm not
property
sure.
manager to have a look.
I'm not sure why that one doesn't make any effect, just makes it worse. So, up there.
It's the bulbs that's doing it. It's the LED bulbs. Some of them are cool white, some of them are warm white.
Exactly, that's true. So are you all set for the next
Yes, we
meeting?
can continue.
Just continue?
Yeah.
Okay then. Okay, councillors, good evening and welcome to the extraordinary meeting of the council as a trustee of Sandwich Tollbridge Fund. I hope you have the agenda in front of you. Item number 1 is apologies for absence received, please, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Pennington has a travel commitment, Councillor Gray a personal commitment, and Councillor Daniel Carter a personal commitment.
Thank you very much. Item number 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest, and this is to receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members in respect of the business to be transacted on this agenda. Do we have any declarations at all? That's a new return on that one. Thank you, Town Clerk. Item number 3 is public participation. 20-minute session is set aside for members of the public to make representations at this meeting in respect of the business on the agenda and other matters if time permits. Individual representation should not exceed 5 minutes. Written notice of the desire to exercise the right to speak, together with the topic to be addressed, must be given to the Town Clerk prior to noon on the day of the meeting. Do we have any participation?
No request, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Town Clerk. Item number 4 is the Sandwich Tollbridge Fund and Guildhall budgets for 2025-2026. Trustees are to receive and consider the proposed Sandwich Tollbridge Fund and Guildhall budgets for 2025 and 2026, as recommended already by the Finance Committee, and this is attachment number 1. So I will open the floor for any discussion or considerations on this budget. I would like to lead on those discussions to say that I've been in conversation with several prominent people from the town and also several councillors, and to tell you the truth, the idea of not putting up any grant funding whatsoever this year could be quite a disastrous recommendation. And we need to remember that not all organisations have the ability to create any income or revenue. So to take, for instance, a very sterling and excellent organisation such as Sandwich in Bloom. Sandwich in Bloom is run by very dedicated volunteers who make our town a much better place every year. Sandwich in Bloom has got no ability to make any income or revenue or have any other funding whatsoever. It's not something you can get grant funding on. Quite often grants are for one-off projects, and Sandwich in Bloom is an ongoing matter that needs funding. So for people like Sandwich in Bloom, there basically isn't really very many or any option for their funding. So what I would like to suggest tonight, and this will be up for discussion, is that perhaps this year, beginning in April, would be a smaller fund for grants put forward into this budget, and then possibly a review later in the year. I would suggest, say, September, on the income coming in to the Tollbridge Fund, as to whether we could extend the grants or increase them in any way or form. So I would like to throw that out there as a amendment to what you have in front of you tonight. I'll start off with Councillor Marie, and then I've got Councillor Tuker and Councillor Black. Okay, no need to stand on it.
Thank you, Chair. I totally agree with what you just said, everything you said. The Maddox Fund is still not operational yet. You cannot take away funding for people, organisations and charities in the town that desperately need their funding. You have got such as the Sandwich Pantry, you have AIDS Concern, you have obviously, as you said, Sandwich in Blue, and you also have the events in the town that desperately require some money because they have no funding. It's a non-profit organisation. I do feel for your amendment, I would second your amendment. However, I would change it slightly. So I would say that you stick to the last year's budget regarding the funding from the Tollbridge Fund. When the Maddox Trust is coming into operation, it's fully working. Then you take that away, and everything transfers over to the Maddox Fund. And that's what Georgina Maddox would like. That's what she would have wanted for the town, to boost the town, boost the town's tourism, boost the town's events that she was very heavily into at the time as well. So I would second your motion with that amendment.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Councillor Marie. Councillor Tuker next.
So I prefer to leave the Georgina Maddox fund and the charity aside, because we haven't yet agreed how it will operate. So I think it's sort of preempting that particular opportunity. In terms of the budget, so just sort of broad brush around this, because we did talk about it in detail in the STBF Finance Committee. The fund that we have at the moment has roughly, so I'll keep it really simple in terms of figures, it roughly has £2 million invested. It brings in circa 50k a year. Inflation for the next year is in excess of 2% estimated. We also have a drawdown identified of 45,000. So they're the figures. That's what we're working on at the moment. So in effect, there is no capacity for any grants. And if you look at the terms of the STBF charity, it's very clear about what is a priority. The priority of the assets owned by the charity, and then any surplus is then used for grants. Notwithstanding that, I fully support the idea that we need to support a small number of charities or events or activities that happen in the town. So I think we should be a bit more sensible about how we approach this, and take the first review point activity is in March of this year. That's when we would, using the process that we've all adopted, we would make awards at that point. Then we would return to it in September. In that window between March and September, we're hoping that we may look to reinvesting the funds elsewhere and hopefully get a greater return. So that's one aspect. Secondly, the performance of the fund itself might spike upwards, which might give greater capacity. Obviously, on the other side is the risk that we might have to spend more. So I would suggest we should be looking at a smaller amount for March, and that maybe we even consider the one or two organisations, Sandwich in Bloom has been mentioned, the one or two priority items that we year on year do reward, and we invite them rather than being open, because if we only agree a small amount, we may get the issue that we had this year, which was we had to dilute the amount available, and we invite to present a business case for an award. So for example, if you take the first half of the year, you could look at, say, 6k, and then invite maybe 2 or 3, Sandwich in Bloom, Folk and Ale, possibly any others like Christmas tree lights, maybe ones that want to put in a request for this coming year. And we analyse those with proper presentations and evaluate them. That's where I would be on this, far more sensible approach rather than maybe just saying that we'll just put some money aside and open up to a wide range. And if you look back over the last year and year before, a number of organisations have not come to those grants in any case, but there are some that were certain about need to exist, like Sandwich and Bloom, within the ward.
Indeed, thank you very much for that. Yeah, obviously I didn't go into the detail that you've just raised, but that would be the premise on which I was hoping to take forward. So thank you very much for detailing that into a greater amount. Thank you, Councillor Tudor. I think we had Councillor Black and then
Yeah.
Councillor Moore.
You suggested a small amount. What small amount are we talking about?
The figure I was looking at was 5,000. I believe the figure that Councillor
Six.
Shuker's put forward is 6.
Just 3 organisations.
So if you would choose, say, a small handful of organisations that would not cope, would not be able to continue within the next financial year, you could probably clarify that as 3 to 4 organisations. So we would need somewhere in the region of about 1,500 to 2,000 per organisation to enable them to go ahead. I mean, the aspect of this is the outcome could be that come October, November of this year, the Christmas Lights Committee could come to us and say, we're terribly sorry, but we would not be able to put any lights up for November or December. So it's just something that we need to be visionary about and consider ahead of the event. So.
This sounds an awfully like Topsy that is going to grow. And I really think, we've had long debates about this. It is a very difficult subject, but we took a very clear view that we would not be doing this. Now we're turning this over. And I'm sorry, that doesn't seem to be the way to do things. We have to make a decision one way or the other. We thought we had made a decision and now we're about to overturn it for some vague things. Now we're talking 5,000, 6,000. We've also desperately been trying to make sure that the fund doesn't keep basically hemorrhaging. And I don't see anything at the moment which is going to change that. So I'm sceptical, to put it mildly.
Indeed. Obviously, Councillor Black, this is a personal recommendation that I'm putting forward, an amendment to the budget here. So what you've got in front of you is what the RFO drafted, which went to the Tollbridge Finance Committee and was agreed. All I'm saying is at this very late stage, I'm throwing out a lifeboat ring to say, do we need to consider, have we considered those handful of organisations that will not continue if we take this away? And I don't believe there was any in-depth discussion into what the contingency would be if we took that away. So I'll move across to Councillor Anderson. Thank you.
I'm really reluctant to say this because I very, very strongly, as a resident of Sandwich, appreciate the efforts of Sandwich and Bloom, the Christmas Lights Committee, and the Folk and Ale event. However, I do know that there are other sources of funding other than the Tollbridge Fund. For example, Dover District Council and Royal St George's. And I do feel very reluctant, as I say, to say that. But I'm not convinced, knowing that there are those 2 other sources, that it really would be the end of the road if the Tollbridge Fund did not make grants this year for those 3 organisations. Admittedly, we are, as representatives of Sandwich residents, the people who most directly benefit and represent the people who most directly benefit from those 3 events. And Dover District Council is at one remove, and similarly Royal St George's is at at least one removed, but I do think that they might be approached and be sympathetic, as I think they have been in the past.
Indeed, thank you for that observation. That's very good. Councillor Breen and then Councillor Morehouse. You can remain seated, actually, until.
Sorry, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just to correct some of the figures that Councillor Chuka has made, the dividend investment income that's budgeted for this year is £48,000. And I would draw your attention to that the plan is to take out 65,300 from reserves. And that's without giving a grant, without giving any grants.
Indeed.
That's the budget that we've got at the moment.
Yeah, indeed.
And as Councillor Chuka rightly said, the average kind of value of the portfolio is about 2 million, and it's stayed about 2 million over the years.
Yeah.
I've looked at it, and in the last 10 years, the transfer from reserves is 1,070,000. And over the past 10 years, inflation has run at 55% over those 10 years. So the value of this fund is collapsing, and we made a decision, we're not going to give any grants this year. And I think we should stick by that decision. The council makes the decision, we shouldn't go back changing it. Earlier this evening, I drew your attention to the fact that there is over £80,000 contingency in Sandwich Town Council's budget. Now, some of these events were instigated by Sandwich Town Council, as far as I know. And in my line of thinking, the Toll Bridge Fund has bailed out Sandwich Town Council over many years. Now it's time for Sandwich Town Council to do the decent thing while the Georgina Maddox fund becomes operational. Because remember, the Georgina Maddox fund is directed towards the community organisations, groups and other good causes. So that money is not Sandwich Town Council, it belongs to these community groups. We should have the Maddox operational. I've asked the town clerk to help with arranging a meeting of the management committee. And before Christmas, the incorporation document was approved and it's gone to our consultants for submission to the Charity Commission. So I think we're relatively close to getting operational. We do need to get a wiggle on it, as we used to say, but nevertheless, that can be done. And I think in the interim, Sandwich Town Council should stump up whether it's 5, 10 or 15,000 quid, so that these local organisations are not penny pinched. They do good stuff for the town, and some of them were instigated for the town. So I support these organisations receiving money. Earlier, we've just approved in the budget £3,000 for the VE Day. Why can't we approve £3,000 for Sandwich and Blue? That's my case.
Thank you very much for those opinions. Thank you there. Councillor Morehouse and then Councillor Wiles.
Could I ask what the timescale is for the incorporation of the new charity, the Maddox charity, and when it can be up and running?
So the registration is likely to take up to 8 weeks. Obviously, it depends on how many people are trying to register at once, but I've been told it's normally between 6 and 8 weeks.
Yes. If that's the case, I mean, surely the consensus is that in the longer term, the Maddox charity will replace what traditionally the Toll Bridge Fund has done. Because as Councillor Schuker said, the priority for the Toll Bridge Fund is first and foremost the assets within the fund, not to subsidise groups or the council running itself, etc., etc. So if we can agree that the Maddox Fund from April onwards can be in a position to start making grant funding to these local groups, then surely that's the solution.
If that is a timely solution and you consider that so, then obviously that would be down to yourselves to.
If there's any short delay to that, the town council could step in and use some of the contingency funds that it's got.
Indeed. It's something to reconsider, isn't it, really? It's just some of these organisations, such as Sandwich and Bloom, would need to, they start from Easter onwards. So it just be,
I can see the point that's being made, because reputationally it looks like we're feathering our own nest before thinking about these other organisations. And they do play a critical part in the Sandwich community and its life and its vitality. So if we can find an interim arrangement, if it is from March onwards when we have to think about applications, but if the new charity can be up and running by, let's say, the middle of March, early April, then surely it can take on this role.
if that's possible, that's true. Councillor Black and Councillor Morehouse.
Yeah, well, I would put forward a proposal that we don't take anything out of the Tollbridge Fund and this year, as we agreed before, but that we, Sandwich Town Council, and we can't be quite how you're going to balance the logistics of that and the decision on that, it should come from Sandwich Town Council. I would support something like that from Sandwich Town Council, and then for Maddox to decide what it wants to do. If it chooses to take over those grants, that's a matter for them. But as we're not really in a position, but I think this council should, although it's not part of this meeting, so technically, whether we have to very rapidly reconvene in about 6 minutes' time as the town council, I would be happy to do that. But I'm very reluctant to take more money out of the Tollbridge Fund for all of the reasons that Councillor Breen has expressed. It's hemorrhaging. We agreed to stop the hemorrhage.
We don't need to alter the budget. The budget is there in the Sandwich Town Council. We just
Yeah,
need
exactly.
to bring forward a paper to expend the contingency.
If that's the way to do it, yes.
If that is the way to do that. So, Town Clerk, could I just ask you your questions on grants from Sandwich Town Council as being public funding?
So there's currently no process for grants through the town council, but obviously if that's what you want to do, then there can be a report and a process draft.
But the trouble is, by the time, sorry, Town Clerk, by the time that's done, Maddox is going to be up and running. So it's an emergency in case any organisations or charities within the town need it. Like for instance, Sandwich Pantry, they run every Monday. They feed people that can't afford to buy themselves food. If they need emergency funding to buy food to support those people that they help, how will they get that money? Because if there's a process for the council to start doing some funding and bits and pieces, that's going to take longer than
a paper bringing forward a report coming to a meeting to the finance committee or to the
council.
Could I just have one person speaking at a time, please? Thank you very much for that, Councillor Marie and Councillor Breen. I believe Councillor Morehouse had his hand up.
Yeah, just some background information on the events. I can't provide that for the lights. I'm sure you can.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, good.
But regarding the Sandwich Festival, that came as a result of a survey done in the late 1980s by the Ellis Warner Partnership, and I still have a copy of that, which recommended that Sandwich had an event, an annual summer event. And from that, councillors Jeff Sneller and the late councillor Dick Perry were the protagonists putting together the Sandwich celebration. And then it was such a success, it was decided that it would become an annual event. Obviously, a lot less, it was very highbrow, the first event. It was considerably reduced, but it was very generic. Lots of things for different types of incomes, age groups, tastes, etc. That was supported, that was set up by Sandwich Town Council. So I do feel it's important that Sandwich Town Council plays a part, whether it be by STC or by STBF, in maintaining that event. So with regards to the Folk and Ale, that was set up in 2011 as a result of concerns about 4 of the town centre pubs. That was the Red Cow, Market Inn, the Fleur de Lis and the Nui, which are all under threat of closure at the time. I think this was in the midst of austerity and the pubs were struggling. And the Chamber of Commerce helped set that up. And then it became its own freestanding event, supported in part to a degree by the SCA. So that's a bit of background information on the events. I feel passionately, it's particularly regarding the festival and the lights, I believe, because I'm sure the lights has also traditionally been supported by STBF, STC.
It has.
That maintains.
Just before I go to the two.
And additionally, with regards to representation, we have insisted on having an STC representative on Folk and Ale, the lights and the festival, courtesy of the fact that those organisations have been given money by STC, STBF.
Indeed, that's correct.
So I do feel it's important that we maintain that support.
That is correct. And I think the thing that you're highlighting, Councillor Morehouse, which is also what I'm highlighting as well, is this reduction in volunteers in this town. And there is a massive reduction in volunteers. Both Councillor Morehouse and myself have been on a vast number of events committees and other organisations in this town, and we can actually see them dying away as we speak. And just this weekend, I was talking to some new people that are moving into the town, into Strand Street, and one of the things that they said that they liked about the town that made them think about moving into the town was the community culture that we have here and the events throughout the summer. Now that's what they said, that made them spend a large sum of their money to come and live in this town as opposed to Faversham or any of the other sink ports. Now, the Christmas lights is exactly the same. Just to correct Councillor Breen, all the organisations you said about, none of them were actually initiated by Sandwich Town Council, and they're not Sandwich Town Council organisations or committees. So just to bring up to date, the Christmas lights was actually started by a few members of something called Rotaract many years ago, about 30 years ago, and it got a large number of volunteers. And when I handed it over, I believe there was like 12 volunteers putting the lights up, and there was a committee of about 18. And now, not to bring them into the conversation, but Councillor Marie could tell you the situation we're in now, where it's only 3 or 4 people actually putting the Christmas lights up, and the whole thing could literally be on a cliff's edge as to not happening at all. So that's all I'd say. Just some final discussion on this. Councillor Black had his hand up first, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Franklin.
Well, there's a full STC meeting in 16 days. So I suggested an amendment a few minutes ago, which seems to have dissipated, and I was restated that we declined to create an events or donations budget, whatever we choose to call it, this year from the Tollbridge Fund. But we, as others have suggested, we invite Sandwich Town Council to use some of the reserves. And I would suggest a figure of no more than 5k. If at the end of the time period, the Maddox Fund decides it might wish to take some of those over, that's a matter then between Maddox and Sandwich Town Council. But that would be my proposal, that this goes to Sandwich Town Council next meeting, and we arrive at it doesn't need to be a long process, nor do we have to reinvent the wheel, because we basically have all the procedures in place, but it's under a different aegis. That's all it is.
And the legality of
well, I'm not
the town council isn't able to currently.
When the fact we do not do it currently does not mean that it's necessarily unlawful. It's custom and practice. That's what's and what do towns that don't have a Tollbridge Fund do? I'm sure that some of them support organisations like this. So that suggests to a layperson it is lawful.
All I'm saying, Councillor Black, is there's very strict financial regulations about the preset money. So any money that comes out of the STC accounts, there are very strict regulations around those. So, Town Clerk, did you?
I'm going to say, all you need to do is really have a resolution that you do want a grants budget, and then we need a grants policy, and we need the process by which you're going to actually work that policy and invite applications. And so there is work to be done. And I'm not saying, obviously we are a phone as well. We need to look at the financial regulations, but town councils do have grant budgets. That's what they can do.
I'd like to bring in the financial officer responsible for.
I just wanted to say that in the same way that we have regulations to do with the Tollbridge Fund grants, we also had an old document listing out all the regulations giving out STC grants up to about 5 years ago. But they were smaller grants and they were more restricted.
Indeed. So we'll take 3 more questions. So we've got Councillor Franklin, Councillor Morehouse and Councillor Wiles on this one.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was involved with that August Bank holiday, going up ladders, putting the bunting up, it should be a week festivity. It was quite a thing, in its day. But a lot of that funding was, a small town grant, but part of it was private funding as well, from other organisations. The thing about the Sandwich in Bloom, with January, they've got to put their orders in for their plants, haven't they? That's the problem. If they don't get their orders in, they're not going to get the plants, are they? So I don't know if we can act as a guarantor or something for them. I'm not quite sure. But it's very urgently required so they get their orders in, because otherwise, unless that lady at the nursery takes a risk, it's a lot of money. I don't think she should take that risk.
I don't think she should. So Councillor Morehouse and Councillor Chuka's got his hand up. Are you still? Okay, and then 4, just those 4. So Councillor Morehouse, Chuka and Wiles, and then we've got to go to the resolution.
So timescales, you've got almost 12 months to the lights. That does not diminish the fact they still need to be planning. But regarding the other events, the Folk Finals in July and the festivals in August, it doesn't give a great difference. We mustn't let ourselves get into a comfort zone here. These organisations need to know what the budgets they're going to be playing with as soon as possible.
Indeed, thank you very much. So Councillor Chuka and Councillor Wiles are the last 2.
So that was one of my points, is that we are jumping from one, and I recommend exactly what Councillor Black says about not wanting to take an amount out of STB efforts. The starting point was about trying to address an issue specifically for a very small number of organisations that are not council generated, and the needs, certainly Folk and Ale already have been asking for a number of months for clarity. Sandwich in Bloom are very clear about the January deadline as well. We could easily get ourselves very caught up in a very complex situation that somebody or some people need to resolve very quickly. And secondly, we also need to make sure that the town clerk has been given some space, I'm not sure enough space in terms of the impact of this. We've got the idea that maybe a resolution is that what then comes behind it. My point was about supporting a very small payment out of a 2 million budget that is shrinking, and I've been very clear about it is shrinking, but this is not going to sink the boat this year. And things may improve as the year moves on in regards to the fund. That's our aspiration.
Indeed. Yeah. Thank you for that. So Councillor Wiles is the last question, but before you go to that, I would ask that Councillor Black brings his proposal to the STC meeting so that it isn't dissipated. You said earlier that your proposal had been dissipated, but
it didn't get discussed.
It can't be voted on here. It needs to be voted on obviously at the town council meeting. So I'd be very pleased if you could bring your proposal to the town council meeting.
I can do that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Black. And then finally to Councillor Wiles before we go to the vote.
Yeah, I just think this discussion has highlighted the rather complex structures that exist with the council, the 2 charities now. So the Tollbridge Fund, I think, has become almost conjoined with the town council, like this symbiotic relationship. But the fact is, we are the trustee of that fund and of the new Maddox Fund, and our duty as trustee is purely to the fund. Excuse my French, but we shouldn't give a toss about Sandwich Town Council, because our legal duty is to the fund and protecting the fund and making sure it's administered in accordance with the
Indeed,
the
that's
founding
correct.
documents.
That is
So, you know, we have to always bear that in mind, that
Indeed.
we're here as the trustee of a fund, not as town councillors.
Indeed, indeed. And based on the very robust discussion we've had tonight, I'm quite happy to remove my amendment that I brought forward. I apologise for any discomfort it may have caused anybody to bring that forward, but I just think that it's very important that we have these discussions in the public gaze, so that there is a rounded consideration of other groups in this town. So I'd like to put forward to you the recommendation that the trustees approve the draft budget of the Sandwich Tollbridge Fund. Do I have a seconder for that at all? In its current gaze, without any amendments. So, Councillor Breen, seconding. Thank you. All those in favour of the current draft budget, please show. And we've got, so 2 abstentions.
Sorry, councillor Tomlins, you voted.
Sorry, I
Thank you.
apologise, I was up and down.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, councillors. That has been passed, but thank you very much for the discussion. I think, as Councillor Wiles has summed up quite nicely, I think that's given us a little bit of an idea of where we are with this joint feeling between both the Town Council and the Tollbridge Fund. So thank you for that. Item number 5 is letter of representation for McCabe, Ford and Williams, and this is for trustees to receive and approve the letter of representation from McCabe, Ford and Williams that relates to the preparation of the charity's financial statements for the year ended on the 31st of March 2024. This is attachment number 2. This is rather a formality, but decision is required on this as to accepting this. So could I have a proposer and seconder?
Just a question about the Magna Carta and Charter of the Forest. There was an article in the Express, I believe, today about Sandwich, which talks about the value of those 2 documents. I won't give the figure because in case anyone's watching.
Indeed, thank you for that.
I wonder if, are they insured or they're not insured?
Yes, they're part of the insurance, yes.
But they're not valued.
No.
Okay.
That's
I think the process.
probably the case.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, you need to start the process.
indeed, yeah. But thank you very much for raising that. Were you going to propose the letter of representation?
Yeah, I support that.
Thank you. And did I have a seconder? Councillor Ripley, I believe. All those in favour of the letter of representation, please show. Thank you. That's unanimous there. Thank you very much. And then, oh, that's it, isn't it? Item number
6.
6 is the date of the next STC as STBF trustee meeting is the 17th of March 2025. And with that, I would like to close this meeting of the Sandwich Tollbridge Fund at 8:50. Thank you very much for your attendance this evening.